Welcome to this episode of Lead the Machine podcast, where today's leaders and tomorrow's talk about the human side of AI at work. I'm your host, Kirsten Marr, and really pleased to have Colleen Campbell join us today to share her perspective. Colleen has spent more than 2 decades leading large-scale transformation inside complex organizations. Today, she's the founder and CEO of A Human Eye, where she works with executives to bring clarity, creativity, and human-centered strategy to their AI ambitions, bridging the gap between technology and organizational readiness. Before founding A Human Eye, Colleen served as senior partner at West Monroe, where she led a team of 160 consultants and oversaw multi-million-dollar programs in AI, digital transformation, and operational strategy. Earlier there, at her career at West Monroe, she built and led the firm's transformation enablement practice with deep focus on portfolio management, change management, and organizational design. Her career spans a wide range of leadership roles, including National Director of Change Management at Centric Consulting, Head of Organizational Effectiveness at Navistar, and strategic change roles at Zurich Insurance, One Smart Team, and Smock Management Consultants. Across these experiences and many more that she's helped clients implement enterprise tech platforms, redesign operating models, integrate acquisitions, and bring new workforce strategies to life. Colleen brings an incredible breadth and depth of experience to change management with transformative technologies and AI. This is where the rubber meets the road and where so many implementations struggle. She and I share this passion for focusing on this tricky area because there is such a big need to help companies integrate and embed tech, data analytics, and AI. And for a lot of reasons, many of which we'll talk about today, this is really difficult. We also share a passion for the creative side and the power of storytelling. Total bonus. Colleen is going to share why the most successful AI transformations start with people and culture, not platforms and models, and how modern leadership requires a clarity of purpose, safe experimentation, and a willingness to redesign the rules of work. This is going to be a great conversation with real world examples, actionable insights, and takeaways for everyone. So, Colleen, your leadership experience is so valuable for the times. Talk to us about the massive transformations you've led inside large companies and now advising leaders navigating AI change. What drew you to start your own firm focused on the human side of this moment?
Well, hi, Kirsten. It is such a pleasure to be here. So thank you for that amazing introduction. It's a really big pleasure to be here and joining you today and being interviewed by a wonderful storyteller. So I'm excited to have our conversation. So what got me to start A Human Eye was I've been doing, like you mentioned, people process technology work for many, many years. I'm very passionate about AI and have been doing AI for many years also. So for me, it was how do you bring that right combination of people, process, and technology together? So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is I am a real strong passion for humanity in general. And I am concerned about how AI is being rolled out, making sure that we're making good decisions. So I just recently got my AI governance professional certification from the AIPP because I was like, it's really important that we really
What is AIPP?
I believe it's just the acronym now, but it was originally the International Association of Privacy Professionals.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of, just ensuring that you understand what are the AI laws that are out there, because there's a lot of them, and especially the ones in Europe are really important to a lot of companies. Singapore, there's ones in United States, obviously, and even their own states and cities even have AI laws. So those types of things to think about. how you're understanding just generally how AI is evolving and how you need to build the right structures for governance to ensure that that's really important. So definitely the human side is really first and foremost to me is really important because I think making sure we've got those governance structures so that we do make really wise decisions as we go forward is super, super important. But back to the people process technology side. I mean, that's the part that I see, and I know MIT just had a recent report out that talked about the state of business in AI, and that was, 95% of Gen AI products are not making it, they're not having they're having zero returns, basically, in their
They're caught in
investments.
pilot purgatory. You
Yeah,
pilot
or yeah,
something,
they
it
don't get
just
to
doesn't.
production.
Yeah,
Yeah, they don't roll out, and it's makes a lot of sense to me because of my years of experience of looking at how you've got to get people process technology working together. And what you see a lot of the times is there's these great products and great ideas, but you've got to look at how are you, first of all, from the people side, how are you engaging your leaders in developing the vision of what you're doing with AI? Why are you doing it? And how are you rolling that out as you go forward? So super important that you get leaders like engaged together and saying, okay, I'm the CFO, I'm the CMO. I need to understand how we're going to be using AI. And I also need to look at it from our strategy. Like our business strategy is this, but our AI strategy needs to marry that strategy also. And sometimes it's like if you've got a growth strategy, you want to think about, well, what are some potential AI growth products? Maybe I can actually make profit off of some of these. Maybe I have some data that's out there that could, utilize in a productive way. Or maybe you have, some cost cutting measures where you're like, we need to put in more efficiencies right now and automate some things. So there's a lot of different ways you want to look at it. So getting your leaders aligned around where are we going to spend our money in AI before you start to put in products, not knowing really the impact. So that's that first step is really getting people around it and then looking at what are the use cases that make the most sense for your organization based on that strategy. So
yeah.
even before you go to product, it's like, why are you doing this? How are you aligning people? And then how are you going to measure it also? Like, what are you going to measure as you go forward? Because it's got to have real business value. It doesn't just be like, hey, we implemented it and we adopted it on time. It's on budget, on scale. It's like, no, that's not the real metrics you're looking at.
There is a pet peeve of mine that I love that you just raised this point. And I think a lot of executives need to be taken to task, all of us included, on this point. We spend so much time ahead of trying to do something, researching it, making a business case, putting our spreadsheets together. Here's going to be the payback. Here's the potential, the hockey stick that is never the hockey stick from the beginning. And then we implement something and we fail to continue to measure it past like maybe the first couple months, like past maybe the first board meeting after you launched it about the results, right? And so like 80% of this effort goes into this, theoretical, business case, and then we measure it for a little bit, but then we're like on to the next thing we think we need to solve instead of continually measuring the impact of what we do. And in my opinion, that does not help our employees because they feel like they're just constantly launching something and then nobody cared about what it did a year from now, 2 years from now, because we're on to the next 4 or 5 things. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that if you really need to be clear your metrics. And I think governance is a way to help that because governance can start to continue to measure that value. So
Mhm.
if okay, we've successfully launched and everything's go, and now the next shiny object, right? We're going to move on to. It's if you have governance, it's going to be looking at your whole AI portfolio and it's going to say, oh, are these things really helping us get where we want to go with our business, not just with AI, but with your business? Is it really driving you in that right direction? So I think metrics are really core. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with metrics
You do.
because for the first reason, most of them have really difficulty figuring out what are the right metrics. And they're like, well,
Why
we
is
can.
that? Why do you think that it's so hard?
I mean, it is hard. It's not easy to like for someone who's been doing it for years, it's easier because I know, okay, here's my list of let's start with the business, right? But a lot of times with technology, you're like, well, it's going to make us, this much faster and it's going to, but ultimately there's like these leading and lagging metrics, right? So your leading one might be, it is faster, it does this, but from your lagging ones, it's like, but is it impacting your overall your productivity, or is it impacting your overall growth? Those are that should be doing that, and governance does give you a way to measure that and make sure that you are keeping an eye on those things as things go, further down the road. So there's a lot you can do, but I do think executives just struggle with how to write a good KPIs. Like, how do we really measure? And when you look at AI, you should have portfolio AI metrics to say, if our strategy is this, is our portfolio of AI really getting us there? So there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but to me, those are important from the metric side.
They're so important. One of the things I've seen in companies I've been at, but just working with hundreds of companies, around data analytics, is they have a hard time pinpointing that this thing led to this result because we did so many things to increase, to grow, to increase profitability, to increase it. And so it gets very muddled, and they have a very hard time saying, how are we going to piece this apart and be comfortable with those KPIs instead of saying, yeah, 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 I get that you put that on a dashboard, but we did six other things that impacted that number.
Yeah, and I think you just have to be very specific with what you're trying to accomplish. And writing again, if you just jump into a tool without thinking about what's the use case. So where are we going to focus and why are we going to do this? So maybe you want to say, hey, we're going to cut costs. We want to figure out, maybe you're, in the legal business or whatever, and I know there's some tools out there right now that you can quickly, take a look at, precedents, and you can use a lot of things to look at scanning documents and looking at these legal contracts and looking for issues, and, that will automate some of those, very repetitive activities. And if you can take a look and say, okay, were we able to significantly reduce our costs and speed up our time by using these tools? And then and is that something that's pulling our, was a good investment on our part, for the long run for our portfolio as a whole? And I think those are the things that you have to, like you said, you have to continuously measure those, but you need to like check them off the box that it is doing what you need it to do.
Yeah. So, before AI was everything it is, now, even though AI has been around, but clearly the ubiquitous nature of it is fairly recent. Digital transformation maybe was the thing right before. And I know you've worked on big digital transformations from your early work at Zurich and Navistar. So how do you see that work and what companies were going through in terms of digital transformation, similarities and differences to now what you're seeing with AI?
Yeah, I think with digital, I mean, it was a lot of changes in especially your ways of working, the ways that you did things differently, right? So I think that is very comparable to, and even going back to the internet, right? Because when that first launched, it was like, whoa, what is this? And that was completely transformative for everybody, right? I see AI as the same too. I mean, I think everybody's in the camp it's going that direction, but I definitely feel like it's going to completely transform, especially the way we work. So by that, I mean, right now we've got tools out there like Copilot and ChatGPT and those types of tools, which are more showing strengths in individual productivity.
Mhm.
So you and I are getting a lot, like I know I'm using it all the
Me
time,
too.
and I'm getting all these great, speeding up on this and that gets done. And then sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes it's work slop. I was just reading an article from Harvard Business Review, and they were saying I can't remember the title, but work slop was in there. And I thought that was a great way to say sometimes we generate a lot of junk with AI too, right? So it's like making sure that you're generating the right things as you go
Yeah.
forward.
So when
So
the internet came and it became too easy for anyone to put up a website and put up anything, it became, is this real? Like who published this site? Like very similar, right? Like
yeah, that was a
just because
questionable.
you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. So, I mean, I would say the ways of like we had to learn how to use internet, right, clearly, and then we had to learn how to incorporate digital transformations into the work that we did. And now it's like, okay, how do we use AI? And I think the ways of working and how you think. I mean, think about before. It's like, what did you do before the internet? Where did you go to get information? obviously libraries and, you went to, different people and sources, but now you have this amazing source to get different information, good or bad, from, right? Same
Mhm.
thing with AI. You now have a new tool to generate a lot of new things that force you to think differently about how your workflow is. And I think the whole transformation, and that's where AI adds a lot of value. And I think the MIT article was hitting on that too, is that if you do not have good, value built into your workflows and there's productivity, you're actually measuring and understanding where this is adding value into the workflow. That's completely transforming how people do do the business, do what they do. And as we get better at it, we're going to see a lot more augmentation of the work, parts of the work, or automation of specific things. And maybe there's just the human in the loop at certain parts, which opens up so much for us. So that I would say that's one of the biggest things that's happening right now is just the ways of working and how we work together also with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you harken back to your time at Zurich or Navistar when you were doing, specifically labeled digital transformation, how much of what was that playbook like, and what, if anything, is different about AI?
Yeah, it is. It is so interesting. Yeah, thinking about like back then when it was so different. I think the generative piece is like just so much different, right? That one is the fact that you can generate things and with AI, you've got to make sure that you've got the governance built into it, where, the internet, or digital, you had things that were just, set input, output. Now it's like you've got this black box. You don't necessarily know where things are coming from or the reasoning behind it. So that's why the human is even more important going forward. And which I don't, to me, it's like humans are going to have very specific roles going forward that are important to ensure that we are doing the right things with AI and really making sure that AI is working in an ethical and responsible manner.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a set it and forget it. So when you talked about digital transformation, just to poke on that a little bit more,
Yeah.
when you said it was like input and output, what were the things that were necessary to make that kind of project successful?
Yeah, I would say it's really starting off with people and understanding again the why. You need the big use cases in the front end and designing a solution that makes sense and that people can utilize the process, the workflow, so that it makes sense. And then giving you that output of, whether it's some kind of a digital social media tool or it's a call center or something that you're using that is automating this process.
Where did things, because you've seen this through so many companies, where are the areas, because people think they put a lot of into it, but then you get to these questions and you get to the individual contributors in the front lines and they're like, but wait a second, I have 84 questions about, but what do I do here, there, or whatever. Where did you see it get tripped up if it wasn't, like, where did it need to be thought through more ahead of
Mhm.
time, where companies would be like, I didn't realize you needed that level of detail? Because I will say, as an executive, I'm always surprised how much detail people need, but they need a lot of detail.
Well, the change management is a big piece of it, right? And that is, for one project I worked on with an organization, we just had a tremendous amount of change that was happening very quickly, and we had like a lot of digital, but then just ERP type of situations at the same time, systems that were being altered at the same times that we had to help out. And I think what was interesting about that was that they, really got stuck on certain parts where they did need an outside source. And they were around one, how are the processes changing? Because when you do something different from a digital perspective, that's completely changing, the flow of the workflow. So people need to know what is changing in their workflow. They also need to understand, what do I need to do different?
Mhm.
So how does my role change? And they need the training, they need the communications, they may need the job aids, down to the basics that they need to do their job right. And I just remember this one really large implementation I did where they didn't really have much focus on the process, which I was like, okay, we need to tell people the major processes that are changing. If we're not going to go deep, deep, deep into every single process, we're going to at least tell them, you used to do it this way, now you're doing it this way. And then being able to give them the training to actually do that later, but actually just calling those out in the front end to say, here's your major process changes. And I think AI is the same way. you have got to say to people, okay, this was your role. This is no longer your role. This is your peer AI role now. And then you start here, but you start with review and you start and this so they understand how their job, because this is going to completely shift how people's roles are looking and their job descriptions and their performance metrics down the road. So those are things that you have got to know how you fit into how's your whole puzzle changing and where do you fit into it?
Have you seen companies involve the employees in that process so that when it's rolled back out, the employees felt like they were part of it?
Yeah, I think that's when it's going to make the biggest difference. Right? I'll give you an example. I did a major transformation once where we had a lot of different strategic initiatives going on, and we actually had, when you have a team from the impacted groups, and they're designated people, and they may not be the leader of that group. They may be, people that they give them to that support the effort, right? But they have enough knowledge, or they're going to be a change agent within the effort to really start to spread that knowledge. We did things like road shows and videos and major communications and training. So this was with an advertising company. It was super fun. The CEO came up to me afterwards and he's like, "Wow, that was amazing." And it worked because we got the people lit up, and each of them had their little booths of what was going on and what was transforming the company, and everybody was there. And it wasn't me telling them what was going on. It was people that worked there, and they came up with their own themes for their booths. I remember one was a moving box. So they had a bunch of boxes, and they were explaining how, they were moving all their servers around. That was their particular project, which doesn't sound glamorous at all, that one, but there were more glamorous ones.
But it's
But
super
that
important
particular
to success.
So they're moving their file servers. And so they were saying, hey, we're moving. And I love that they actually did some of the advertising for me. So they came up with the whole. So, I mean, watching them get engaged and excited about the change, it blew people away. Like being able to say, wow, we've done something we've never done, and these people are now engaged and excited. And the benefit of that is the adoption is going to happen way faster when you've got something like that happen versus waiting for, people to learn about what's impacting them later on.
Yeah.
So
Versus like a
I, I
top-down
love I
announcement.
love those kinds of things. And I think AI is even more, you've got to have what I call AI superstars. So you've got to have AI superstars in your group. And the way I think about it is they've got to be folks that are really excited about AI and want to build in the right mentality. And they're people that are tech and business bilingual. So they can talk business, but they can talk, hey, this is the system and how it go the upstreams and the downstreams and how I make an impact and how we make an impact in our team. And then they've got to have, the ability to learn, like absorb learning, because learning is going to be really important in the future. It's like, how are you learning more and more as you go forward? So it could be, oh, I'm just going to look on YouTube and check this one thing out. Or maybe there's certifications within your organizations you can offer. Or maybe there's a go-to peer, or maybe it's ChatGPT. You're going to ask questions, whatever. You've got to be able to learn quickly in a lot of different ways. Another thing is you've got to be able to understand your AI and your peer your connections and how they work together. That's an important thing. And then I would also say, I'm missing one, but I know change management's an important one too. Is like you're the change agent. You go and help that person in your team learn too.
But
So
I
if you've
think
got
what you just
designated
talked
resources,
about was change agents at every level. So it's never going to work 100% top down. It's not going to work 100% bottom up. It has to be all the levels of the organization. And what I kind of hear you saying is as a leadership group, you have to figure out how to ignite the different layers of the organization and to find champions who often are not in a management position, but they are leaders, right? They're leaders of their peers. People want to know what they think. Sometimes I have found, I'm curious what you think. Sometimes it's the people who just are excited about the new technology and want to roll it out. But sometimes it's your biggest, you know, curmudgeon, or the person who might be, the most, just questioning whether or not this is going to work. But if you can turn that person around, and they have the audit, because everyone's like, well, they're going to poke at all the holes. So I know that this person is going to poke at all the holes and be the skeptic. And if their questions can get answered, then I'm going to feel better, right? I mean, have you found kind of some of those similar
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you said it way better than I did. But I think like I've always had like, I try to get a few of those people on the team whenever you're having major project. And I remember this one woman, it was a executive search firm, and that was the client. And there's this one woman who's just like, nope, 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 nope. But she had enough say, and she had been there forever and everybody knew her. And we said, we're putting her on the team because
Mm,
this was like the fifth time they had done this project and tried to do this project outside, not our company, but another company. And they had failed five times. Yeah, and it was interesting. There was a lot more to that, but
yeah.
it was interesting. And so we're like, well, give us those people. We want those people because we're going to see what's going to stick and what's not going to stick. And she first was tough as nails, and was difficult. But then after a while, she just was like as happy as could be because she knew we were there to get her perspective and
And
understand
her
what's.
buy-in.
Yeah. And so everything rolled out fabulously, I gotta say. In fact, the CEO was like, "Where's the fire?" I'm like, "Well, there's no fire." He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm so happy." I love those happy customers, but he was so happy to see that it went so well. And when you have things like that, it is because of those people that they know what's going to work and not. So you got those people can be very useful on your projects.
Yeah. So that sort of leads me to think about your work that you've done. I mean, you've worked on org design. You just talked about a recruitment firm. You've done call centers, customer success. You've done operations. I mean, right? I mean, you've spanned a lot of industries. And in terms of AI and what you're seeing, what's a good example of AI enabling, not replacing human roles?
There's upskilling across the board. There's role changes. There's probably going to be different performance metrics, all those things. And that's a big change, just like it was with the internet and then digital. Um, so to me, it's like you've really got to help people get there and move in the right direction.
How should leaders be thinking about rehumanizing their AI strategy, and where do you see it working?
Yeah, I think from a rehumanizing, I would say you really need to look at a couple things. One is culture,
Mhm.
because like for example, Google has built an amazing culture where they actually share failures, they share lessons learned. That's going to create a culture where it's okay to experiment, right? And so I know a lot of organizations, especially the high tech, a lot of them do that, right? But it's like even in all organizations, they've got to make it okay to do that. And it doesn't mean you can't do that in a safe way. You can certainly do that and just, keep an eye on it. But at the same time, you're providing lessons learned. So people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that because that was not good. But you're making it safe for people to share that. I think that's really important. So culture, upskilling, those kinds of things. I think org design, looking at how your org's going to shift is going to be interesting
And isn't
because
that like that's a big one to tackle.
yeah, because it's not just okay, so you may have some org shifts, right? Depends how you do it. Some organizations are going to like a skill-based organization, which means you could easily move people from marketing to finance, which sounds like really, but you could if they are like, hey, I'm an analyst over here with this level of skill sets, then I can be able to move over here if needed. So as the organization shifts, because of AI, I think that'll be really helpful in some ways. That's happening, but then you also see the org design might be more, hey, how do we look at AI across? Does it go under which group? Like in energy and utilities, a lot of it's going under the chief strategy type of officer
Hmm.
because they're going across holding companies, right? They're not just the CIO. The CIO, there might be multiple CIOs. So you need someone who's above all that to see where the strategy is going, right?
What has helped, your clients or the companies that you've seen move past experimentation and into real value? What's been the difference?
So it's interesting because I have a client right now that they had invested in tools and now they've pulled back from all of it.
Mm,
So it's interesting because what is missing is it goes back to that. your AI strategy as a whole. Where are you going with your company? And then back to what are the use cases that make sense? Because, there's a lot of great tools out there. And the market is consolidating to some degree.
So it's coming down to discerning um, all the different tools, but making sure, to your point, it is centered on a business use case, that it's
Yes.
solving. So we see an ability to grow, we see an ability to cut costs, we see an ability to make more efficient, we see an ability to fix problems in our products that are really too expensive for, that AI can, really help us do that in a way where we just can't ever hire enough humans to do it. We're not looking to decrease our staff, but we're looking maybe to enable our staff to actually solve problems that normally we would have said we need to triple our staff or double our staff, and nobody can really sort of do that. But maybe you could share a story if you have one, where you've seen bold leadership make the difference in getting AI adopted.
I have an example where this one company that I'm working with, I just was so impressed with them. Like their leadership team brought all the key people to the call on our first call together. And, it was really impressive because they're like, they need to buy into this. And so even during the proposal part, they were actually they were part of, and it doesn't mean everybody was there, but a lot of the key people were there to say, this makes sense to us. So that was something different that I don't usually see, but I love that they have engaged their team and they're the ones that have got to own this. And you could see that they have the right collaboration across their teams already. Where I've had other teams where I've walked in and it's like, it's tough when you see the leadership team does not understand or know where it's going. And then it's like, that you kind of see the battles you're going to face going in with these clients when you, especially in the proposal phase, when you see those types of things. So that's
And
been interesting.
if you were to say out of 10 proposals, how many leadership teams are more on the deer in headlights versus we have our whole group here together? Like if you were just, just to
A lot of
spitball.
deer in headlights, I'd say. I mean, I think that's normal, especially for small and mid-sized businesses, because they are trying to figure out how to, I mean, the big businesses are already spending lots of money, right? They're spending, doesn't mean they're spending it well, but they're spending money, right? Some of them are doing it well, right? I think the small and mid-size are struggling a little bit more to figure that out. But I think it does just kind of emulate their organizational style. So I think, that's why for me, I think when I come into those situations, it's like we got to deal with the leadership issues first. And it doesn't mean that you've got to say, let's all sit around and coach and get that. It's more like how do we get them in the same vision and get them to understand what's important, and you're going to get money, you might have to wait for money, like those kind of conversations, which aren't easy. But at the same time, how do you, get the leadership team moving and moving fast so they're comfortable?
Yeah. And my assumption would be if you don't get the leadership team comfortable first, it's going to be really hard to get everybody participating because they're going to hear different things from the leadership team. And once your leadership team isn't aligned, then it's like, this isn't
Oh,
going to go. I'm just going to sit back. I'm just going to sit back and let this thing fail, and then wait until they figure out the next way they want to go. You know what I mean? Like as an employee, you're like, this is, I don't see this really working.
oh, yeah, you nailed it there. I mean, it's so true. It's like if their leader isn't bought in, chances are, I mean, it's not gonna be it's not going to be advantageous for them to actually jump in and say, oh, hey, but let's do this. So that is why your leaders are really your change agents to start, right? They're the ones that are going to start that change within the organization. If they're excited, then everybody else is going to get excited. If you really want to change your culture and start educating people, and like I do a 90-day plan where we just like, okay, here's how we get going. Like I have a leadership training that we do. And it's like, here's the 90 days, get going with your team. And it's like, part of it is just like sharing the vision, getting them excited, start to look at who are some of your core change agents within your own team that are going to like start to move this for you and help you with it because you can't do it yourself. And then like how do you, build that literacy and start moving things moving towards them becoming an understanding, and then they're part of the solution because once you get your enterprise strategy down, you go to, let's say, hey, we're going to invest in sales. You sit down with your sales leadership then, and you're like, okay, let's look at your workflow. Where can we really put in the right product, the right use cases here? Where is it where you're struggling? So it's really mapping that out and saying from a value chain, from our customer's perspective, where do we put in AI here? What's really worth it and what's not? The companies that get in front of the AI, creating the AI superstars, those are the ones that are going to have a larger market share down the road, is my thought. There's a lot of organizations just waiting to see, or they're doing it slowly or in smaller groups. But if you get your whole organization to be AI superstars, or like a good majority, and they all start to see the transformation, they start to move that way because, as we know, like a change curve, back to our hockey puck there. It's getting them. Once you've got that momentum, there's that tipping point where it just starts going, and everybody's like, "Oh, I need to do that. Now I know what I need to do," and they go do it, and they're excited about it, and they see the change. I think that's what gets people engaged, and that's when you actually you'll have people that will be able to be 3 times more productive than they previously were, or different, because they're using AI throughout their process. And now they can go after new markets or new opportunities. So they can actually focus their energy in different spots that are more competitively of a competitive advantage for them and your organization than those that would be doing the same thing, and waiting to see what happens. When we start with the organization, we'll do a AI org assessment, and we look at 6 critical things. I have a maturity scale I use. So it starts with like nascent, like doing very little, not doing much, to all the way being AI first. So the 6 elements that we think at human AI are important is, one is that leadership and vision, and exploring, structured, integrated, and AI first. So those are the phases. And as you go, so when you're in your nascent, you're not really doing, maybe you're getting going lightly. Exploring, you've really got some kind of vision now. You've got products that are starting to move. Structured is you've got the governance in place, the structures like the AI portfolio management. You've got core elements that are driving that. And then the integrate is when you are across your teams, like sales and marketing are working together, and finance and business units are starting to work together with AI. So it's an integrated approach as an organization. And then AI first is like where AI is actually helping leaders, helping people make decisions. And so AI agents are helping other AI agents and so forth and so on. So it's, if you look at a company like Midjourney, and I don't know, like a year ago, they were like 10 people, and their valuation was $200 million for 10 people. I imagine they're very AI first to get to that point. So, and it doesn't mean that it's all about reducing employees, but it's about thinking differently in the ways that you work. So they built their company with very few employees doing that. But so that whole org assessment process, maturity. So you look at the 6 criteria across those phases, and how do you work your processes, the culture and the employee engagement, your technology infrastructure, your data, is it unified? What does that look like? How can you actually use your data? And I mean, those are the ones that you would be looking at to say, okay, let's assess all these and say, are they moving together? So back to your thought on, what's really important is like these have to move together. It's not like, okay, let's just throw up technology or let's start with people. It's like you gotta kind of look at them all together as they're moving through the phases, so that you're going, okay, we're moving along with the people, the process, and technology are working together.
Yeah, well, how are the people going to trust the data if data's not, central to you, right? And the reality is tech is messy, data's messy. You've acquired a bunch of companies, the systems I mean, it's so hard to get all that stuff to integrate. So you have to figure out the specific use case where we can tackle the data, where we can feel good about it. And then the people, because you can work on all the people stuff, but if at the end of the day they don't trust the data, like it stops.
Yeah, if you got this
Like
massive
AI
data,
first is
can't
data
use.
first, right? AI first is data first. I mean, data is like such a big part of the whole equation to even get people on board. And so you have to get them through. We can take messy data and make it clean, and here's how we do it, and let's do it in this one particular project. You can see how that works. You can be part of it. It can be transparent, and then you can learn how we can continue to fix our data over time. And then, of course, the tech, how do I get it into my workflow? tell me I don't have to look at six different screens. Like, please tell me you're going to figure out the software and the tech and like the workflow, right? Integration. Because people need that to be successful.
Absolutely. And so I think that when you look at like, where do I start? You have to have your org assessment so you know where you're at. We're here. And then you have to look at that. Where do we want to go? Here's our vision. And here's our what we have to address within technology, infrastructure, all those other people. And then you want to look at, okay, now that we know where we want to go and what the big rocks we have to move are, and we know what the metrics are based on our strategy and all these other things, then it's like, then you start to say, okay, now what use cases make sense? So that's a formula for success for you to determine where to focus your energy as an organization versus just plugging things in and hope they stick.
So, Colleen, thank you so much for all the practical advice and things that you've seen in the trenches, and look forward to continuing to have the conversation. So, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kristen, and I appreciate your amazing knowledge and background too. So, I mean, it's been a really fun conversation with you. So, thank you for that.
Good. All right. Thanks, everyone.